Hello and welcome back to the Horrorble podcast, where we are here to give you hopefully a refreshing and interesting new perspective on horror movies. We are based out of Louisville, Kentucky. I am Devin, and I'm here with Manton, Brandon, and Dylan. How are you guys doing?
Been better.
Beautiful.
Just lovely.
Feels like an eternity since I last saw you guys.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time.
Oh boy, just 12 hours ago.
Yeah, we were back in the woods and got back about 7 in the morning or so.
Yeah.
We're operating on no sleep, so we should probably say that at the beginning of this podcast so this makes sense in retrospect.
Still no excuse for the low quality horror.
We always have to have some kind of excuse before we do this podcast.
I'm so sorry.
So since we mentioned the outdoors thing, we want to talk about what that was and what we did.
Yeah, first we have some exciting news for the podcast, guys. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Tell us what it is.
Yeah? Well, what it is we have an email and a Twitter now. Is that exciting? Yes, we do have an email and a Twitter now, so you guys can reach us. The email is simple. It's just Horrorble Podcast. That's HORROR Bull Podcast at gmail.com.
It's BL.
It's BLE.
BULL, I think is this.
Horrible.
Horrible.
And unfortunately, the Twitter can't be quite as long, so it's just Horrible Cast. That's at Horrible Cast. But yeah, we'd love for you guys to send us some emails. Anything's fine. Just maybe your personal reviews on the movies that we discuss, or possible your possible favorites that you want to talk about.
Solicitations are welcome to
Sure.
Just I don't know.
Just berate us if it
tell us how bad
we do
we
something
are.
wrong. But I was thinking, I feel like it'd be fair if for the first legitimate email we get, that we read it on cast and discuss it. If you guys,
so yeah,
think.
if you can do hashtag first dibs, hashtag dibs, then we should be good.
Make sure you get all of that.
As long as it's not from our mom or something, it's got to be
So proud of you, sweetie. Hashtag first, hashtag dibs.
Oh, here's one right here. Hey, welcome to Gmail. Oh, fuck. No, but yeah, it'd be great. The first legitimate email we get, we will talk about on cast, as long as it's worth talking about, I guess. But yeah, all jokes aside, we have noticed we have a lot more listeners than we thought, and we are very gracious of that.
We set the bar at 0, so it was really easy.
I think we literally were like, if we get 30 listens, we'll be happy, and we've far exceeded that. So thanks to all you listeners, all you ghosts out there that we're not sure exist or not.
You ghouls and goblins.
Fellow ghouls and goblins.
But on that note, though, Devin, I to the point about how many listens we've gotten, that's one of the things I want to point out for the email address. So if anybody's listening, even if you don't have any questions or insights, absolutely just shoot us an email and let us know you're actually listening to this.
Yeah.
I want to know who's listening. I want to put a face on it.
Even better, Twitter is even better for that, though, really. Just tweet anything at us. We love to hear stuff about horror or whatever you
Give
want
us
to
all
talk
the
about.
retweets, all the mentions, all that stuff. I don't know, it's been a while since I've been on Twitter.
So, also on our Twitter, we'll just obviously give you updates on the podcast of when we'll be doing it or when the new episodes are out. But we're going to be doing this on a weekly basis now. We haven't established a night yet, but we will, hopefully, for next cast.
And we'll give Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, we'll give you that information then. But let's get right into it. Last night we did do our, it was originally a 4-movie marathon, but we snuck in a 5th one. So we started setting up probably around 5. Started the first movie around 8 p.m. and went until 6, 7 in the morning.
Now, Devin, we have to give some setting here that we do this in this Cops in the Woods, just out in the back of nowhere behind our friend's house.
Right.
So shout out to Brendan, actually, for letting us use that space. It's pretty amazing. Got the tiki torches up. It looks really creepy. We worry about getting murdered by turkeys or coyotes.
Every time I walk up that path to get back to the house, I feel like I'm actually walking into a Silent Hill film. I'm just going to fall into a ditch.
It's amazing.
I thought I might die a couple of times that night.
I think I might have.
Hopefully we can pull some pictures for you guys and throw it on the Twitter or something. Does anybody want to set the scene for the
In
what
a
it's
time
like?
when.
It really is super, super cool. We have it's really this little, what would you even call it? I called it a cubby and I got berated last time.
It's a cops or a clearing, I believe is the proper term.
But it's so small.
Cops, COPS. It's the hit show on TV.
Spike TV. No, it's this little weird clearing of no trees, really. I mean, except some small ones here and there. And
did they clear it out that way on purpose?
No.
Or it just happened that way.
Grew that way.
Oh wow!
And it grew with 2 trees that are at perfect screen distance.
Yeah, exactly. That is kind of funny.
God bless you, Mother Nature.
Yeah, it was great, and it really was kind of like a happy accident. The way the projector, for being so cheap, looks great. The sound that we had was amazing, and the setting was almost made for that specific reason. So it was great. So anyway, we mentioned last time that we would do movie reviews from now on and sprinkle in some different things here and there. But we originally said 7 movies because for the October marathon we do a 31 and 31. But we're going to hold off on that until maybe next year if we're still doing this, because we just kind of got off the ground running. So we're going to do just the 4 movies we saw last night. We saw 5. One of them was You're Next, and we've discussed the hell out of that already. So we're not going to...
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, I was already wearing a You're Next mask there, so we've pretty much beaten this one to death.
Yeah, I think... Well, I mean, we could talk about it all day, but we don't want to make you guys go through that. But the 4 movies that we did watch were 1970s Italian slasher called A Bay of Blood.
There are also multiple names for that one. Twitch of the Death Nerve.
Twitch of the Death Nerve.
It's got scads and scads of names, so you can find it under quite a few different other things.
Mm-hmm. So we started off with that, and then we premiered VHS Viral, the new VHS, the 3rd installment of the VHS movies. And then after that, we followed it up with You're Next. After You're Next, we went into WNUF Halloween special, which was quite interesting. And we finished the night, finished this bad boy on The Canal. It's 2014, not to be confused with, I believe there's an early 2000s Canal, or maybe a TV show, but it's the 2014 Irish movie, The Canal.
And spoilers here, but stay tuned till the end of the podcast, because this one's great, and we're probably going to weigh in quite a bit.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Some of us are.
Yeah, man fell asleep.
Some people just couldn't be bothered to handle the excitement.
Well, to be fair, we started that one, at 5 a.m.?
Yeah,
I
something
mean, he
like
does have an
that.
excuse, yeah.
I actually don't know if the fact that I was literally passing out and completely delirious actually enhanced the experience. Usually it really detracts, but I think that...
We'll get to that when we get to it, but like I was wide awake through it, even though I was really, really tired.
I remember the first thing you said after the movie was, I haven't blinked for 5 minutes.
I had not blinked for the last 5 minutes of that movie.
But yeah, does somebody want to kick it off with A Bay of Blood or Twitch of the Death Nerve? We need somebody to give us a short rundown of that one.
Where to start? This one is just weird. It is usually... A lot of people will consider it the proto-slasher movie, which even though, Black Christmas or Halloween are usually regarded as the first real slasher movies, this one is, what is it? What year?
I think it's 71.
71 or so, yeah. It's really early 70s Italian Mario Bava film that is not really a slasher, but has enough kind of slasher elements to it that people give it that incomprehensible plot. Otherwise I would try to explain it to you, but that's one of the big problems.
Well, somebody set it up. I mean, give him something.
There's
here.
a bay. There ends up being some blood in it too.
That's
Okay, so
true.
let me add a little more detail to that. I'm trying not to spoil this one, but the movie is... It's more about the scenes and the action that you're seeing, and less about the actual plot line. So there's a lot building on a very thin plot. So I'm gonna try and not divulge it, but there's kind of some family feud going on. You see some early scenes to kind of set that up, which actually, looking back, kind of make no sense when you first see them, and are only relevant in your mind 3/4 of the way through the movie. But kind of to the point about the proto slasher. This movie probably isn't gonna have all of your slasher elements, just because it is so early, right? But there's definitely some pretty visceral kills in there.
There are some kills in it that are just straight up taken by like Friday the 13th and its ilk later. One especially, which was really infamous in Friday the 13th, but I didn't realize it actually had been done here first.
Yeah, that's what I had read about when I read about this movie initially, was that it basically inspired Friday the 13th, which makes a lot of sense. And with that said, to give you a tiny bit of a rundown, I mean, it is in a woodsy area with a big bay. It's also about 4 teenagers that kind of, I don't know if they break into a cabin or they...
That part is really unclear.
But that's where your slasher elements kind of vaguely come out. It's like 4 promiscuous teenagers hanging out in a cabin, partying, and then they're being watched by a couple of other free... Yeah,
the movie has a really bad habit of introducing characters and not truly introducing them. And then removing them
swiftly.
Yeah, very swiftly.
So, yeah, I mean, man, did you have anything you want to add to this conversation about this bizarre Italian movie?
We did find out at one point that I guess part of the Family Feud aspect was over an inheritance.
Yeah.
Which I don't even remember them mentioning at any point, really.
Oh, I think we can say what the first kill is because it happens immediately in the movie. And
Oh
it's
yeah,
pretty cool.
it's not as
pretty
oh,
cool.
Actually, the first kill was one of the kills. Actually, we'll discuss this in a second. The kills were great, but the first kill was great. If you want to explain that.
I honestly don't remember what that first kill
It was the wheelchair. So you get this,
right, okay,
yeah,
that's
you get the
right.
scene with this woman melancholy. That's not even a word.
Melancholical.
She's melancholy and she's staring out of a window and it's playing all this piano music and she's just taking her wheelchair around this house that, as Blutster mentioned, has way too many chairs for somebody's wheelchair. And as she's looking out the window and everything, suddenly there's just this really quick jump cut and she is hung from her wheelchair from the ceiling by a noose, and it's bizarre. Like she's twitching, and
Yeah.
Give it a little more credit than that. We've got some dark figures walking in. It's very dark, and the beginning of the movie is actually really strong, which was strange because the beginning of the movie was so rooted and so real, and then it just absolutely goes off the rails after that, and the movie is just insane.
I mean, it drags on quite a bit for being what it is, but there are quite a bit of kills in it. They're just sometimes spaced a little bit too far apart, in my opinion.
Well, and I try to make a habit of not, reading too much about a movie, and I didn't beforehand, but afterwards I was like, I've got to figure out what's going on here.
You have to read about this one before you know anything.
And as I read it, apparently Mario Bava had this idea of all these kills, but he didn't have an idea of the plot. So the plot came second, and it totally makes sense.
That would make a lot of sense.
I feel like that's probably the case in a lot of horror movies, honestly.
No, I can absolutely see that. And like just to kind of add some baseline here, like basically what you have is you have a family feud. You have this group of family members, and you have some kind of
Louis Anderson Family Feud, or
no, we're Richard Dawson, man.
Anyway, and you have some innocent bystanders, but it all basically takes place on this lake and the surrounding property, and that's kind of like the fulcrum for the story. This is where it's based. This is where most of the action goes down. That's kind of, you find out later that's the reason they're there. That's the reason it's going on. They'll kind of break into that later, and then basically, as soon as you get in after that initial kind of shebang with the old lady and the crazy introduction with the noose and the wheelchair, then you kind of start actually getting in, meeting characters, and then removing them.
The craziest part about that first kill, though, is that the killer immediately is killed.
Oh yeah,
The
that
tone
was
for
the
the
weirdest,
entire
yeah.
movie.
I still don't know if he killed himself or what happened.
no, he
because
definitely killed
his
himself.
body disappeared.
No.
No, he did
gets
not.
stabbed
He
in the
gets
back.
stabbed,
There's
yeah,
no way he stabbed
absolutely.
himself.
What?
Yes.
I actually
I didn't even
know.
question that when I saw it. That's how poorly edited it must
It's
have been.
really poorly edited.
Because I was just like, oh, he wrote a note and stabbed himself. But I guess I was way off on that one.
I just want to tell everybody that this movie, I'm glad we started it first because you can see how disoriented we all are and how different our opinions of it are and what we noticed. This was literally the first movie we watched. We were revved up. We were
7 p.m. We're like all
we were
awake.
drinking coffee. Like there's no way we could have been like understood this movie any better.
But let's dig into this beast. Let's talk about stylistically how this movie was. It was shot in one of the most bizarre ways, and the only way I can really describe it is
Delirious.
Well, sure, but I don't know if this is just my understanding that it was an Italian-made horror movie, but it did seem kind of very Dario Argento-ish in style, but almost like Dario Argento, like hyperbolized, like times 1,000 or something. Because
I thought we were gonna do this down to earth thing. What's with all these
Sorry.
$10 words?
Well,
It's all
yeah.
these $10
well, here's my
words,
point.
buddy.
Dario Argento.
Let me finish my point. Dario Argento, I feel like, does a lot of weird pan in and zoom in type shots and a lot of kind of like shaky, not shaky cam, but like the camera switches from like face to face and thing to thing, and this guy does that so rapidly. It's entirely distracting.
Most of this movie feels like it's the cinematography's done by like a drunk 3-year-old. It's
Yes.
crazy.
I will agree with you.
Or
to an
somebody just
extent.
on a load of drugs, like a shitload of
I
drugs.
agree with you to an extent. I feel like these had to be the eccentric Italian counterparts to the Evil Dead cameramen because there was lots of really just beautiful and genius shots in there that really were like really set these creepy stages, and then you immediately go from that to next scene, which is could be 3 seconds, like scene to scene could be 3 seconds, and then you have a different cameraman who basically only knows one function, that's zoom in, and zoom out. Two functions.
Well, it's intentional. Like we say that this is like something directed by a drunk 3-year-old, but it's actually not. There's some artistry behind it. It's just not clear what they're trying to do.
Some of the shots look like amazing.
Yeah.
Like honestly, some of the scenes look beautiful.
I completely agree. I'm not trying to bash it because when I started out, like I was blown away by like a lot of the scenes. They were like really well constructed with the camera work, and they were very beautiful, and I thought it was great. But then, just as soon as the movie picks up, the camera work just goes.
It was definitely deliberate the way it was shot,
Yes.
and so it wasn't an accident. It didn't look like that terrible, but it was a very distracting.
Really
I think
yeah.
we're disagreeing with their technique, so it's more of our opinion.
And I'm still wasn't quite sure if the zoom in was more of a thing of the 70s or like an Italian Dario Argento style thing. But I feel like a lot of 70s movies in general have that.
Yeah, the ones that I've seen that tends to be the case, and also like the weird kind of blurring out and Vaseline lens type.
Yeah,
thing.
like even The Conjuring was kind of brilliantly shot to look like a 70s movie, and they had a lot of those kind of zoom in type things.
A lot of whip pans, a lot of stuff that made me like actually feel a little physically ill just because of the way that the camera was moving so rapidly.
Wait, The Conjuring or this one?
This one.
Okay.
No, not the Conjuring.
Absolutely, this movie. I feel like the camera work kind of lends to the manic nature. Like scenes are changing very quickly. The camera work is very just sporadic, and like the action is just as intense. So I think it is appropriate. It really was odd for me. So we've kind of talked about like the scene.
I was gonna say, let's get into the good stuff, guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So
What about those kills?
Exactly. We talked about the camera work, but really what matters if we're talking about one of the original slashers is how were the damn kills?
Yeah, if we're talking, especially if we're doing a face value thing, that's what we all enjoyed the most. Obviously, in this movie were the kills.
They're creative and they're brutal.
They're
they're
brutal
really
and creative for 1971. That's saying a lot.
Yeah, when you guys actually said that this preceded a lot of my favorite slashers, I actually think it kind of went up a couple notches in my book because the kills in this movie were just absolutely insane, and like some of them were just so graphic. I was really impressed by that, and I think that they did inspire a lot of their the following.
And I can't remember off the top of my head, but it must have been 7, 8 or more kills.
It's like 12 or so, but
It's so hard to keep track of all the characters, honestly.
especially because there is not, and I don't know that this is too much of a spoiler. There's not one like rooted killer. It's
everybody's killing each
everybody's
other.
a killer. It's
Yeah.
bizarre. Like it's a game of Clue, except everybody's trying to kill everybody.
I don't know if you guys thought about this, but and this I guess we can talk about more later. But the movie definitely has some similarities to Your Next.
How so?
Well, with the whole inheritance and the family feud kind of going on,
sure.
and like there's a lot of killing of each other, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
At a baseline, I could see because it is very disorienting. You don't really know who the
Yeah,
quote unquote
exactly.
good guys, who the bad guys. Which I'll give you that. Yeah, it's definitely Your Next. Like
Speaking of Family Feud, can we edit out that Louis Anderson joke I made
Absolutely
earlier?
not. You are stuck with that
It's
one, buddy.
just I keep repeating it over and over in my head, and I regret
You're
everything.
stuck with it, buddy. I'm sorry. This is for posterity. It's recorded.
We'll go back
Everybody
and
can hear your
no,
terrible sense of humor.
We'll go back and edit it out.
I'm sure.
I hold your fate in my hand, Evan. It's not going anywhere.
On the note of Twitch of the Blood and Bay Nerd, or whatever, I don't know whatever this thing is called, but it is just bizarre. I don't know if I can recommend it. I think you have to be a certain type of horror film to really want to, or a certain type of horror film, a certain type of horror fan to really want to watch this one.
Yeah, I'd say especially like in the spirit of this podcast, it'd be hard for us to really recommend it. But we're gonna go through. That's the way we're gonna do this. Is we're gonna go through individually and tell you guys if we recommend it or not, and maybe say a few words on it in a minute here. But yeah, we are talking it up. We are kind of highlighting the good parts of it. So I don't want to have anybody confused. This movie was not
Great.
It wasn't the best watch. And we can talk about it on like a watchability level and just like a movie quality level, and I probably will kind of give you both of those. But you do have to be, that's exactly right. You have to be a certain kind of fan to sit through that and come out having, not regretting it, basically.
It makes it hard for me to recommend it simply because I feel like anybody who should see it already has.
Yeah.
It's niche enough. It's not gonna like wow any new fans of the genre. It's kind of, I don't know.
As aspiring horror movie buffs, not really, but as people like us, we need to see as much of this bullshit as we can. I mean, whether it's good or bad. But I guess really a good way to rate on that note is like whether I would ever rewatch something or not. And I can tell you that's a movie that I'm never gonna rewatch. I might YouTube the kills. Maybe someone spliced those together.
And not worry about yourself for doing that at all. No.
No, that's not weird.
So I think you guys have already kind of delved into a little bit like your lasting impression. So I think that would be a good segue to just say like all four of us.
Yeah.
Like all four of us. Like, would we? If someone's asking you for a recommendation, would you give this one out there?
Well, let's go individually. I want to hear everybody's point on it. So if anybody want to start, Matt, do you want to start or someone else?
Yeah, sure. I actually might be in kind of the minority here in that I would actually recommend watching this movie. It's just so bizarre and so weird. Something that no one's really touched on yet is that the actors, it appears that they didn't speak English as their native language.
Yeah, right.
But they're speaking English.
But they're speaking English. Yeah. And it kind of gives it this really bizarre feel, like they were trying to make an American movie. Yeah. I don't know. It's very strange, and I think it's a lot of fun to watch. It just depends on the situation. I think given the fact that we were watching it out in the woods and having drinks and stuff, it was just a really fun movie to watch. Yeah, I wasn't bored very often.
Yeah, it's entertaining. And on to mine, I guess. I would recommend it, but I also wouldn't. I would recommend it with a grain of salt. That this movie, I think, gets lumped into a lot of like forgotten classics lists and things like that. But I think there's a reason it was forgotten. I don't think it's as well put together as a lot of the things that kind of aped it later. And so if you're looking for a really good, really lasting, really excellent horror movie that you could, I don't know, add to your collection, no. But if you're looking for something kind of fun as a rental for a watch or two, yeah, I think it's worth seeing.
I think I think both of you had really good points, and I'm going to go ahead and say that Brandon, would recommend this movie, and there's three distinct reasons why. One, I found the movie to be very entertaining, which, despite all of its technical flaws and all of that, I still thought it was a great movie, and I think a testament to that is just how much we're talking about it. Yeah. I've seen way better movies than this, better constructed, but for some reason this movie made me think about it.
It has a lot of charm.
Exactly. Yeah. I thought about it for hours. And part of that was because of how damn confused I was by it.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
Still, two, kind of to your all's point earlier, is that this movie did precede a lot of your slashers, and so yeah, I kind of expect newer movies that kind of work on that to kind of execute better, so I think that's to be expected. But I think it's always kind of good if you really want to see the whole genre to kind of start back at the origins of some of these things. And then, let's see, what was my third point? Damn, I really had three concise points.
Was it the ending? Because that's...
yeah, the ending...
right.
The ending was phenomenal. So let's hear, we got...
I don't want to spoil it, but
predicted.
Yeah.
No. And then I think the third point is just, it's memorable. There's lots of movies that are made better, but hot damn if I don't forget them the next day. Like, that's one of the things that really like sticks with me about horror movies. There's so many that I've seen that I literally can't remember the names of them, can't remember what happened in them. But as strange as this movie was, I don't think I could ever forget that. So I recommend it.
So let me get this straight. Is that 3 recommends so far?
I suppose so.
I think
that's 2.5.
And when you said
yes and no,
when you said you were going to be in the minority, you assumed as well people were not going to.
Well, sure, because you guys especially, it seemed like we're pretty much mostly negative on it, and then I was surprised.
Well, let me conclude with mine. And we have 3 recommends so far. There's a few notes that I kind of wrote down as I was listening to you guys. One thing is that we can't forget is we had an amazing group, an amazing atmosphere to watch this movie.
Very true.
Yeah. We had 15 people, all good senses of humor. The movie, there was constant laughter and goofing around during the movie. So it's not like we all were sitting dead silent watching this movie in awe of like how well made it was. There was a lot of tongue-in-cheekness to it. Like we were watching it kind of in a way as a joke at some points. So the kills, of course, got some cheers and some laughter. So we weren't watching it in a very serious way, so we got to kind of clarify that.
Well, but
so,
if you want to talk about face value, though, I mean, were we entertained? Absolutely.
Exactly. That's my point. I just want to clarify that if you get a good group of people and you want to have a fun time watching a movie, this could be the one. But don't go into this movie late at night by yourself and force yourself to stay awake through it.
It's not going to spook you.
Yeah, it's not going to scare you, and you might fall asleep during it. But if you get a good crowd, it could be fun.
Yeah, but recommended. You might fall asleep.
But let me continue. This is and this is my opinion, by the way, guys. I'm wrapping up with my opinion. And one thing that I also wrote down on a different note, completely different note, has one of the best decapitation scenes I've seen in a movie.
Absolutely, baby.
And maybe all for the wrong reasons, maybe not, but it was
so good.
unbelievable. I'll try to keep it spoiler free, but
good.
you'll know it when you see it. I can't imagine.
Each one of these kills, you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty creative. It reminds me so much of Friday the 13th in that sense.
That's what is really impressive with this movie is that if this was one of the first, just how creative a lot of the kills were. Like,
I remember multiple times, Dylan screaming so loud, just yes, fuck yes, like after specific kills, where most people were kind of laughing and clapping, he was just so vocal, like yes. So
I think it was because it was those split-second moments of clarity in that movie where it was like, oh, I know what's happening. Somebody's getting killed right now.
Those are very concise moments.
Followed up by just the weirdest shit after that.
With all that said, if you're gonna watch this, get a good group of funny people and expect something fun and silly and not serious. But with all that said, I'm gonna not recommend it because I think you're gonna have to have a very, very specific atmosphere that's very hard to attain sometimes to enjoy it. So I don't want to mislead our first listeners in them saying, wait, what is this face value bullshit? This movie's boring as hell.
Yeah.
So
this isn't one you want to sit down by yourself with headphones on and prepare to be blown away.
I would say don't even rent it. Like have somebody else rent it and go to their house and watch it.
I feel like we're all like changing over to don't recommend now. Like we're all just like, oh, never mind.
Really hard to categorize.
It is hard to, yeah.
But that's the great thing about this podcast is we described it for a good 20 minutes, so you can pick and choose what you like to hear and you decide from there. So we gave you a good idea of what you're going to expect. So
we got a couple other ones on the horizon too that are pretty fun to talk about.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, that was 3 recommends and a 1 not recommend. So yeah, let's go on to the next one. So yeah, after Twitch of the Death Nerve or a Bay of Blood. Anyway, that movie. The next one on the list that we watched was
World premiere.
VHS Viral, the third product of the VHS movies. I'll go ahead and I'll volunteer myself to kind of set up the synopsis, at least of the overarching story.
Well, set up the synopsis first for what the VHS series is.
The VHS series, is, and I always get these words wrong. Is it an anthology or collaboration?
Yeah, anthology is.
It's an anthology of usually between 3 and 5 mini movies. Or short films, as they call it in the biz. They usually don't refer to them as mini movies.
You gotta watch it.
These ones are small.
But yeah, they're short films from usually pretty well-liked horror directors.
And some who aren't. Yeah,
the big young guns that are up and comers, I guess you could say. And they came up with the first one a couple years ago. Damn it!
What?
I don't. Bruce's face.
I just had to hold him.
Bruce's face when I said up and comer. He was holding back. So he looked so mischievous.
Don't even.
He was great about it.
Don't edit this out.
This is not getting edited out.
Don't edit this out.
If I'm getting shamed for my Louis Anderson joke, you're getting shamed just for thinking of something.
Oh boy.
Anyway. They are the big guys that are coming out of nowhere now, the best horror movie directors, the young guns, as you could say. And I guess the first one came out a couple years ago, and they had major names now that are they have names now like Ty West and Adam Wingard, who are pretty big names now, but back then they weren't quite as big. And after that, they had that brilliant and also really, really messed up Indonesian director.
The guy who did The Raid and Raid 2.
He did The Raid 2, and he did Safe Haven in VHS 2. If you know, since we're not reviewing VHS 2 right now, he did the Safe Haven one, which you'll know it because it's the only Indonesian one. And it's the longest one, it's the most dramatic and the most work.
Let's just say it's the best one.
Yeah, it's easily the best one, and it sadly even overshadows some really decent ones that are in that movie because it's so good. But this one was the third installment. And one thing, I'll say it right off the bat, that struck us a little odd and kind of disappointingly was that it was only 3 short films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It felt really neutered compared to the rest.
Very short in comparison.
So I don't know if that's a compliment or not, that we were disappointed that there wasn't another one, and we'll get into that in a second. And that's the problem about reviewing anthologies, is that you're watching literally multiple movies, so some could be stinkers and some could be gems, as we like to. That should be our rating, like a stinkers and gems. I feel like that's what we say.
I like that. Let's do it.
All right, so I'll go ahead and give you, and there's always an overarching story to kind of poorly tie all these movies together in a
I don't know
way.
if that's always the case though, because with the first one and the second, or the first one, it's really tenuous. Their
Sure.
overarching story. The second one gets a little bit more into that, and this third one fully.
This one's
commits to
great,
it.
and the third.
Yeah.
This is the best overarching story of the three. I think we can all agree.
See, I would disagree.
Okay, well, we'll get into that, but let me go ahead and explain the synopsis of the story. It was the overarching story. It starts out basically a group of teenagers trying to get famous from making a massive viral video because in their neighborhood there's a police chase that they're watching on the news of an ice cream truck.
Yeah.
An ice cream truck, which is obviously already pretty eerie. Kind of blasting, that scary ice cream truck music. Like
I was half hoping they were gonna just pull out fucking
Sweet Tooth.
Sweet Tooth from
Yeah,
we were all
Pushing Up
thinking
Black
that.
Baby.
It was very much in that vein, and there's a bunch of teenagers on bikes, and also there's other people throughout the movie all running, trying to capture this. Like they're all obsessive of trying to get this viral video.
Only tenuously connected though. There's like one main character who follows the ice cream truck
Right.
through the whole thing.
Oh yeah, and it starts out with him and his girlfriend. So eventually, what happens is his girlfriend goes missing during this chase, this odd chase that is going in circles over and over again. So it's already kind of not your typical police chase. It's they're going in circles. And there's multiple people following them, multiple people trying and putting themselves in harm's way to try and capture footage and get a viral video. It's kind of gives you this obsessive vibe of how obsessed people are now with getting viral videos. And
On the note of that message though, it's pretty ham-handed. It's not subtle about any of this stuff, but
sure,
it does work to some degree, and we'll talk about that in a second.
so that's your story right there. It's just he's trying to get this viral video, but it ends up him trying to find out where his girlfriend kind of disappeared to when she walked out of the house during this chase. And we'll get into that later.
These overarching stories, though, are usually just kind of an excuse. They're a framework that is given to kind of put some people in front of a VHS or a video cassette player and play all these spooky movies or whatever. This one commits fully to its premise, and I think it works for that. But it's better than most of the other ones. But I think Bloodster's with me on this one. I don't think it's the best of the series as far as the overarching ones go.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I was wrong on that.
Like going off your point earlier, Devin, like the VHS franchise, you usually have these directors who back then hosts didn't want them, but now they're hot hosts all
Right,
want them.
right.
So they're making these like short films, these short cinematography.
Oh, you mean mini movies?
Mini
Experiences.
movies, please.
Yeah, so they're making these mini movies, and there's usually one kind of
Stand out.
one. I wouldn't say stand out, but I would say like there's a kind of a movie in the background to tie them together. It's usually a vessel to deliver these other shorts delivered by these like directors.
I like that idea, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love it.
It's
which is why
fun.
I love the VHS
and you don't have to.
franchise.
We don't have to take it too seriously when we see them. We're not going to judge those movies as much as we are the short films. So the fact that they even do that, they have the courage or audacity to do that, I appreciate, and I think it's fun, even if it doesn't make sense. I'd rather them have a lame, fun, overarching story than just 5 movies back to back.
No,
to
I'm
back.
totally with you, and I feel like that's why VHS to me stands out a little bit more than like ABCs of Death. As much as I love ABCs of Death, I just really appreciate that they kind of have this extra story in the background, this extra world.
Well,
to kind of-
Jesus, how tough would it be to do an overarching story for 26 short
I
films?
know. I'm not even, trust me, I'm not even talking poorly of ABCs of Death. That movie is raw.
It is.
But just, I appreciate that they kind of give you this background and kind of let you have even more suspension of disbelief. So you see these videos and it just, I don't know, I feel like I get into them more. So, like, I feel like that's kind of the world with VHS. So, like, Devin, like, what did you think?
Well, before we go further, I want to explain if you don't know what ABCs of Death is. It's an anthology of 26 very short films, very mini movies, you could say, between 2 and 5 minutes probably, where each director, 26 different directors, are given a letter of the alphabet and told to make a kill with that letter of the alphabet, and they're really fun. Be
Some of
careful.
them.
Go in pretty cautiously though, because when you have 26 directors making movies about killings,
Some of them are horrendous.
some of them are very, very hard to
Some of
watch.
the most disturbing things. I think they're just like, I have 1 minute.
What can I
I gotta
do?
make it.
Specifically the one made by the guy who made the amazing short from VHS 2.
Oh,
he makes
it's
one that is almost unwatchable.
Not worth watching almost.
In ABCs of
Right.
Death.
And then on the other hand, you have Adam Wingard, who we love for making Your Next, and his was just maybe the worst one in the entire
Terrible.
movie. It was so poorly meta. Anyway, to get into it, yeah, VHS viral. Well, I won't give you my entire general my consensus of it yet, but
kind of a rundown of the films that are involved in it, the mini movies, I'm sorry, that are involved. There's one about a magician with some kind of cloak that is more than it seems. One about, what is the second one?
The second one's the Spanish one.
Oh, yes. It's like this doorway between parallel universes that these two guys who are the same guy open up, but they switch places for a brief amount of time and some weird stuff happens. And then the third one, which was surprising to us that it was the last one, but I frankly think was the best one in it.
I think we mostly agree on that.
It was called, first off, just called Bone Storm, which rules. But it's this really snot-nosed skater punk sort of thing that just goes off the rails.
Yeah, so let's go into the first one. The first one is, and we'll have to do these separately in a way, but the first one is the one about the magician who basically commandeers a cloak, and he's completely talentless until he gets this cloak, which is magical. It's a very, very like unreal, bizarre type concept, so you really have to suspend your disbelief a lot.
Glitzy for a VHS short.
Right.
It was, yeah.
So what do you guys think of that one?
Mark goes up to goes to straight stardom.
This one, it very much seemed a little out of place for a VHS movie.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad kind of saying ill of that short because I thought the concept was really cool and I thought it was really well executed, but like VHS has really set my expectations high to be scared. Like the previous two really were like, these shorts are going to be scary. They're going to be very horror. Like there's going to be no question.
There's nothing scary.
This one is not scary.
Yeah, I would not consider it horror. But kind of to my earlier point, I would say it's well executed. I would say it's a great short.
I enjoyed it.
It's pretty well made. It's a little cheesy. And if you are the type that has a hard time suspending your disbelief, don't watch this movie because it's absurd. Like what they try to convince you of. But we, of course, are very relaxed and chill when it comes to that kind of stuff. So we can watch it and be like, all right, we get it. But if you're not that kind of person, it is really tough sometimes to be convinced of what the hell they're trying to sell you, I guess. But
it was good. It's just it didn't feel like a VHS short.
It felt out
it
of
was
place.
it was fun. It was very like action packed almost.
Yeah,
it was. They did a lot of really clever things with camera work and a lot of really clever effects and stuff, like when the girl gets sucked into the chair. That was really cool.
It's a great example of filmmaking. It's just
it's not scary. It's not horror at all.
Yeah, some of the effects it's really not horror at all, but some of the effects they use that they're talking about and some of the kills, I guess you could say, are very impressive and kind of fun and creative and new. But beyond that, no, it's not really a scary movie. And for me, after making two pretty solid and all-around scary VHSs, I was expecting people to give it their all, like go above and beyond and be like, all right, if I got a shot to be in VHS viral, I'm going to make a scary ass movie.
Right, we kind of set ourselves up like expectations were sky high for this movie.
I think that's why this one was so disappointing to a lot of us, is that it was not scary overall. It was kind of, the scares were phoned in, the filmmaking was not, which was a strange mix, that it feels more professional. It feels like they finally hit their stride, but they hit a different stride from what anybody was really expecting.
Right, maybe they're just taking a different direction that we don't.
I hope they don't. I hope.
I agree.
I hope they go back. But does anybody want to talk on that one anymore before we go into the second one?
No, that one's, I mean...
There's not much more to say, yeah.
And then the next one was the one that I'm not sure, but
really
I imagine it's the Spanish one that I think is by the same guy who did Time Crimes.
Yeah.
He's a very talented.
I've heard very good things about it.
None of us have seen it, I don't think.
And I don't think so, but he also did A's for Apocalypse and the first ABCs of Death, if you've seen that, and it's quite good. For being 5 minutes, it's pretty dreadful and insane. So this one, again, expectations for me pretty high. I assumed, okay, this guy is no longer an up-and-comer. He's a guy that's like made a dent in the horror movie world. So I was pretty excited about this one, and for me, it was almost a little too bizarre, and again, not the scariest thing I've seen. But you guys, I want to hear what you guys think about it.
Well, if we're being honest, it is the closest thing to being a scary short in this VHS.
Yeah,
there were moments that were eerie. They definitely set it up like it was going to be a scary movie, but it was so bizarre. Like you have a hard time really getting into it just because it's.
The build up of this one was really great. It felt really uneasy. It felt kind of off and wrong, which is the whole purpose of it.
Right.
But
the whole premise is
this is a prime example to me of somebody just failing at at tell, don't show. Like in horror movies, I think what's most important to me is where you got the build up of the scare. You've got the ghost that is not shown exactly. But this one, once they show the thing that's wrong in this, it's just comical.
It's
it's silly.
Suddenly
it
silly.
doesn't fit the rest of the tone of the short. It's just they build up so well to this big reveal that is not really worth.
It wasn't a huge reveal anyway.
No, it
I feel like they really
wasn't.
kicked themselves on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It falls apart.
And it would have been fine if the whole thing was silly. I mean, to have just the last few minutes be ridiculous and silly it just didn't fit.
Yeah.
It ended on a great note, though. I'll give it that. Like,
Yeah.
ending wrapped it up.
It
So.
wasn't. Yeah,
They play with some silly practical effects that aren't even very impressive and some body horror type things,
you
right?
could say that. Yeah.
It's
Here we are
bizarre.
talking about practical effects.
It is bizarre, and again, it left a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
But I think, honestly, we can move on to the third one, which
Exactly.
is the standout
Let's
in
just
this
get
one.
down to what we want to talk about.
Bone Storm, baby. Bone Storm.
Yeah, Bone Storm was again a video where they're trying to make a skate video of these kind of punk teenager kids.
Who are total dirtbags.
Yeah, they're awful
The
awful
acting,
people.
the people
and
who
the
play them
acting's
are
great,
phenomenal.
very
That's what I wanna
convincing.
say.
So they're trying to make this video again, probably trying to get this famous viral video thing, and somebody convinces them to go to
Tijuana.
Yeah, Mexico.
To go to Tijuana to shoot it, and I assume they're not far from there in the first place.
Terrible idea.
So they go there to because they were promised some perfect area to escape, but they couldn't find it.
A ditch.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, literally, he said a ditch.
It's
Yeah.
literally a ditch.
Yeah.
Kids have very low
And they
standards.
couldn't find it, so they found something else instead. This big, I don't know what
It was like a water reservoir. Or
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
kind of like runoff.
a drainage ditch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
Full of satanic imagery. No big
Yeah,
deal.
just got covered
Yeah.
in
We'll get there.
pentagrams.
So they skate there instead, and then, like Dylan said, it goes off the rails. If anybody wants to explain,
Well, it's worth talking about the beginning of it, though, because I think that the beginning is so well executed and so real.
Right.
It's just these kind of dirtbag, worthless kids who are just, throwing jabs at each other and talking about skating and getting high and stuff. But it's very real, and like these actors are great. They are so convincing as these roles, so that when the second half goes off the rails, it feels right because it feels like it should happen to these
Right.
characters.
yeah,
No, Dylan, I completely agree with you 100%. These kids are just are so believable that I'm not actually convinced that we're just skaters. And you
Yeah,
just like put a
yeah.
camera on them, like
Right.
just say whatever you normally say. Dude.
And they're like, okay.
And that's why as ridiculous as the later parts get, I didn't even question it myself. I was just like, these kids are just.
It's
just
not even a tonal shift. It
No.
feels right.
Which was so strange.
and we can go into it a little bit without spoiling it. They go basically into the wrong area, like we said, with satanic symbols and stuff, and they're kind of stomping on somebody else's grounds or whatever. And basically, they start getting attacked by multiple things, which you'll see, which are amazing, by the way.
The practical effects are.
Yeah, these things
Pristine.
that are attacking them look great and scary to a point, and
Yeah.
really entertaining. And then basically it turns into them defending themselves. And one thing that I felt was interesting actually about this was it wasn't as much as them defending themselves as it was them like almost like they wanted to
They were
attack.
having fun with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
having
yeah.
fun, and they wanted to attack these freaks back.
That was-
Which makes it all the more
That was
fun.
Exactly.
really
more believable, really.
that was really evidenced by the scene where it was basically like a first person
The gun
shooter.
cam.
Yeah.
They went to like a first person angle and they had the gun just like looked just like a first
And
person
normally
shooter.
I would just kind of groan, but man,
it was
felt
so
just
cool.
right.
They did a good job on
And
that. It was neat.
I think they were kind of playing with this idea that punk kids like that do kind of look for fights in a way, and this is kind of like this ideal, perfect scenario for them where they can just attack these things that are attacking them. And of course, it doesn't pan out great for them, but it's like they really were taking pleasure.
Oh, gas money kid.
Yeah, they were taking pleasure, and they seemed unfazed by them basically being attacked, and they just attacked back and seemed to enjoy it, which
And
I thought was
it's
interesting.
really fun and really funny.
It is.
It's really enjoyable. There was another one where I was just yelling, "Oh hell yeah!" over and over. It was really good.
What did you guys think about the ending of it? Because I was actually pretty disappointed by
Yes
the end
and
of it.
no.
The ending of what?
Just that short.
Of that
We
short.
don't want to spoil it.
Well, I don't want to spoil it,
I'm with you,
but
though,
they teased something pretty major for like a long time. Like even halfway through, they're teasing this reveal of this thing, and then it just had nothing comes from it. Nothing.
I feel like that tease you're talking about is like almost the whole movie. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, they're delivering this giant, just this payload of enjoyment, and it just vanishes off the screen.
But I actually feel like they're better off for doing that because it feels abrupt, it feels short, it feels like an adrenaline kick, and then it's just over. And if it had kind of petered out into something,
Well, what I was
grander than it
hoping-
was, I would have been disappointed too.
I was hoping for something like Safe Haven because they did the same
That
thing.
goes
In Safe Haven, he got away with it. He had that that crazy reveal at the end, and he went all the way, and it paid off big time because that ending of Safe Haven is amazing.
Yeah.
Once again, Safe Haven's from VHS 2. It's by the Indonesian director. I wish I had his name.
Timo something or other.
Yeah, so check that out if you haven't seen it. It's fantastic. But before we spend too much time on this, let's go ahead and give our thoughts on the movie as a whole, as an anthology.
Recommendations?
Yeah, right.
Stinker or Jim?
So I'll go ahead and Stinker or Jim. I'll go ahead and start since I ended last time. For me, it certainly, I think, was the weakest of the three VHS movies, and disappointing that it was only 3 short films in the movie. But that being said, because it's still a VHS movie, which I think are so fun, and I love anthologies, I'm going to recommend it, if nothing else, to see that last one. But yeah, take note, or keep in mind that it's definitely the weakest one in my opinion, and you probably won't be scared by any of them. But if you like anthologies like me and you like the VHS franchise, you should still see it. So I'm going to recommend it with that being said.
For me, I guess I would say I recommend it. It's a fun enough watch, but it's pretty disappointing. If you enjoyed the first 2 VHS movies as much as I did, you'll probably find yourself disappointed. And then
Right.
something else that I wanted to point out was that I almost wonder if they rushed it for a Halloween release because
It's missing.
it's missing stuff. But on top of that, if you watch the trailer, they show some like monsters and stuff that were never shown in the movie,
wow.
and I have to wonder. I think it was originally slated to be released next year.
I wonder if they'll release like a director's cut that just has a full-on extra mini movie in it.
It should have had one more movie. It absolutely should have had one more.
And I have to actually give this a recommendation, though, because it's a VHS movie, and I can't not recommend them because it's such a bare-bones time commitment. It's if you don't like one, you just fast forward to the next one. It's not really... I mean, this is the perfect popcorn movie. It's you put it in and you forget about it, and that's what works so well about the series as a whole to me, with the exception of Safe Haven, which I like on its own. I don't think a lot of them do stand on their own. But if you have to pick only one to watch out of this one, definitely go for Bone Storm. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with me there.
No, Dylan, I absolutely do not disagree with you. So before I say recommend or not, I just want to say that, like, I agree with everybody else that the movie just it had to have been rushed. I feel like there was all this build up and then it just kind of fell off, and I actually can't even remember the full ending. It just didn't stick with me, and the shorts this time just didn't do it for me. So I'm going to not recommend it, but with the caveat that you absolutely need to be recommended VHS 1 and 2, because I feel like they took this exact same concept, had much scarier shorts which had just mind-blowing directing and all that jazz effects, and I think they have a better overall story for me personally. I don't know about my co-host here, but so I would not recommend VHS Viral.
All right, so that's what, 3 recommends and 1 non-recommend again?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so yeah, you got to go into these movies knowing that it's an anthology, so they're gonna have bad ones, they're gonna have good ones, they're gonna have mixed ones. So it's not gonna be a very cohesive type movie. But yeah, after VHS, we went on to see Your Next, which we discussed in detail already.
We gotta stop right here. We cannot start talking about Your Next movie. We'll keep doing it.
Yeah,
just watch the movie.
I thought it was funny. We did joke.
Watch it already.
We did joke about how we were just going to stop the podcast and watch it, and we eventually did watch it. So that was great. And then we went from there to a very interesting movie called WNUF Halloween Special. Does somebody want to give us Does somebody want to give a synopsis of this one?
Is it a horror movie?
I think
would say
so.
yes. Yeah.
But somebody give it a synopsis.
So,
Tim and Eric does Halloween.
Basically, it's
Yeah.
so. If you know what Tim and Eric
succinct.
Awesome Show is, it's so similar. But go ahead, Bluester. Do you want to give it a rundown?
Yeah, let's see if I can walk through this one. I'll give it my best shot. So Dilly basically already gave it the perfect one-word synopsis, but to kind of blow it up.
4 words.
There was quite a few words, I
4
think.
words in that one.
Exactly, not even a full sentence, but it was actually perfect. No, you basically have it's like you're following a news broadcast on Halloween night. We follow just the traditional television format, ads included, everything. It's like a fully baked program, and they're basically the idea is that it was only distributed on VHS, I believe, and so it's the idea that you find this tape, you start it up, and it's like you're watching a news broadcast. It goes from advertisements, specials on the show, and then to ultimately like the meat and potatoes of the segment, which is you're following this guy into a quote unquote potentially haunted house, and they want to basically see how that plays out. So yeah. That's
so in a
basically
way, it's a mockumentary. One important thing to clarify: it's not a modern thing. It's like early '90s, like super early '90s feel to
87.
it. Maybe even late '80s.
Yeah.
And
It's got tracking issues on it
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah.
It's
Exactly.
shot. It looks dead up
So-
like a VHS.
yeah,
copy.
basically
fully committed.
what it looks like and what it is it as if somebody were to have an early '90s broadcast for the news and just popped in a tape and pressed record for an hour and a half. That's what it is.
Yeah.
They have, again, commercials. They have the commercials, by the way, are so funny. So especially if you're in that mid 20s to early 30s age range, it's going to be hilariously nostalgic.
It's almost too real.
Yes.
half the
Almost
time.
too real is what we did say. It was almost too real. So it does kind of like, you let your guard down watching it because it's like, oh, this is a funny commercial that I would remember from the 90s or whatever. And you kind of forget that it is kind of still in a way a horror / comedy. And it is hilarious.
It is really genuinely really funny.
A lot of that rides on the shoulders of the guy who plays the main
I
newscaster,
wanted to bring
who
this
is
guy up so
phenomenal.
bad. What was the character's name? Like Frank
Frank
Stewart.
Frank Stewart.
Frank Stewart. Oh my god, that guy is so
Phenomenal.
funny.
He is so
good.
funny.
So can I just say, like, before we get too much into how awesome this movie was, like, I just want to say that they absolutely fully committed on everything in this movie.
Yeah.
It starts up as if you literally just put in a VHS tape of your TV show you recorded and hit play. There are no credits. The movie
No.
ends the second it ends.
Right, right.
It says stop, blue screen, ends, and like they fully committed with ads,
A
grain.
full warning to anybody who is not patient, because we watched this with a lot of people who loved it, who were totally along for the ride. But if you don't commit to this, like they commit to it, you will not enjoy this movie.
Right, right.
We watched it with a couple of people who were like, "That's the worst thing I've ever seen." Because
Really?
because they were just like, not buying into the fact that you watch maybe the same commercials over and over.
No, the commercials were different.
They were
each time.
almost
They did
different.
in a couple of times they did repeat
The
them.
commercials were almost the best part. But,
I know, they
and I
were
don't even
so
want to say
funny.
that because the rest of it's great too. But the commercials were so funny. They were for
Yeah.
like cheesy early '90s, late '80s like sitcoms or cop movies, and
They
they
were
were
so
Chicago Lightning.
good.
Local
Wanna watch
commercials.
that one.
So good.
Chicago Lightning, was that it?
Space Pilot and the Laser Brigade.
Oh god, yeah.
Can I just say believable though? Like the whole thing about committing to it, like it really sells all the stuff on you perfectly, and like you just let it wash over you. You aren't even critiquing it anymore. You aren't even trying to analyze it. You're just experiencing it, and like
Yeah.
it really made the ads that much more hilarious because it is like you're watching TV.
So this movie, we can all agree, is mostly a comedy, but it's done with horror elements, and it's done to be part of the season of Halloween. It's a very Halloweeny movie, which is great because we want to see
Well,
that.
yeah. On the first podcast that we did, I brought up Trick or Treat as being,
Sure.
like my fifth favorite, and this is very spiritually similar to Trick or Treat.
Yeah, a little
Although
bit
Trick
less-
or Treat is definitely a horror movie. On top of that, this one skirts
Not
around
so
it.
much,
Yeah.
but I will say, without spoiling too much, it does take an odd turn at the end.
Yeah, the
Very
end
odd.
is almost like too dark.
It's like they switched gears completely at the end, which...
But it's still committed to its premise of this is a found, this is
Yeah.
a
And
band
like
videotape.
again, I kind of mentioned how you kind of let your guard down because you're
Yeah,
laughing, and it's
absolutely.
nostalgic, and you kind of start thinking that you're watching a real thing, and so the dark turn in a weird way worked for me, and I don't think we should say too much more on that,
no.
but you'll know exactly what we're talking about. But yeah, if you're looking for something mostly funny, something for the season of Halloween, and something that is...
If you're a '90s kid, you remember.
And yeah, I hate to be that guy,
But it is that kind of
yeah,
movie.
it's super nostalgic. So without further ado, does somebody want to kick it off with their recommendation?
Bluester's pretty passionate about this one. You want to start us off, buddy?
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I really enjoyed this movie. Like, kind of what my fellow casters were saying about the kind of turns it takes. It really sells you on, like, this is a half-hearted movie. It's really silly, but I think that really kind of lets you pull yourself out and be ready for the different elements they're going to introduce. And, like, I found myself really entertained during this movie. It was hilarious. I was cackling like a madman with Devin over here. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff was just too close to home. The ads were so real. And, like Man was mentioning earlier, the acting was so on point that I genuinely believe that these were casters on a real television show that they were pulled from to record this. Frank Stewart was a real guy because it just felt so real. So I absolutely would recommend this movie. The only beef I had with it is that they did such a great job of building up these silly elements and kind of getting you in the mood and getting you in the Halloween spirit that I wish that they had built on that more and delivered kind of more on the scary elements. Like, I thought they were doing such a good job of getting you ready, and I was like so ready to get like scared.
It certainly was an odd choice at the end, and if they would have committed one way or another, it would have been great. But so I'll give you mine, and I'm just gonna be pretty brief. I'm with Brandon. I'm with Blutzer. I fully recommend this movie. I think it's a perfect, terrific Halloween movie, and I would go as far to say buy this movie if you get the chance.
Well, it's hard to find. If you can find it, buy it.
To support these guys who made this, and I gotta commend Manton for digging this one up. It's WNUF Halloween special. Manton, on that note,
I loved it. Frank Stewart really just made the movie. Like,
so good.
There's all the ads are great, but Frank Stewart was just whoever that actor is, like, did such a good job, and like the writing of that character as well. Like, he's just sort of, I guess the word is like sassy
snarky,
or something. He's super snarky. Like, everybody, he's such a jerk to everybody, and
he's so funny.
He's hilarious.
And he's clearly obsessed with himself in his news show.
Right.
He's like
kinda,
the Kent Brockman of this universe.
Yeah,
sure, and you can tell that he's upset with how everybody else, like, he wants to really be like leading everything.
He wants the spotlight.
Yeah, he does.
This is a weird one for me because I loved it. I really enjoyed this movie, but this is a gem that I almost can't recommend because it has to be a very certain person for this movie, and I feel like we are all that person. It's the kind of person who likes Tim and Eric, for instance, which is a really polarizing brand of comedy, and this one is almost identical. So I'd recommend you do a little research on it first before you commit to it, because it is a movie that you fully have to commit to, just the same as the filmmakers had to commit to it.
Absolutely.
So as much as I want everybody to see this, I understand that not everybody's going to enjoy it the way we did.
Well, and hopefully you guys can use our podcast as a reference too, because I feel like we said enough to give you an idea of whether you do want to check it out or not. So hopefully that does it. So we're basically going to have 3 recommendations and a hesitant 4th recommendation, baby.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair.
Go into it with the right mindset, basically.
Right,
Yes,
right.
Again, we had a lot of those this time.
Yeah. So that brings us to the standout of the night.
We've been ready to talk about this one since we started.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Stuck
Yeah,
with me.
unfortunately,
I wish I didn't
it
fall asleep.
was 4 a.m. Manton fell asleep, and we couldn't sleep through this monster. It was The Canal from 2014. It's I'll set it up a little bit.
Movie.
It's unbelievable. It's a Irish ghost story type movie about a man who suspects that his wife may be cheating on him, and shortly after he kind of starts things start unraveling about this, she goes missing and turns up dead very early in the movie. And of course, naturally, the rest of the movie basically is about kind of what happened to his wife, and then it's still along with this dreadful, awful tone of like how his wife, before she died or was murdered, was cheating on him, and you kind of start learning things. It's just a very, very dreadful, terrifying tone for this movie, and I'll tell you right now, it is purely horror. Yeah,
God.
It is a pure horror. I was nervous at times that it was going to start flirting the line of
Thriller.
thriller,
Yeah.
but it wraps straight around right back to horror. That this is a horror movie, and it is also horrifying.
We use the word horrifying a lot. We toss it around a lot. I cannot think of a movie that it really truly applies to more than this one. This movie is merciless. It is kind of mean. It is miserable.
Right.
My God, it's good.
It sticks with you.
Yeah, like I basically completely agree with both of you. You're trying to work with this guy to unravel this mystery. Like, he's like in parallel with the police, and this movie is just ruthless. It is absolutely terrifying. Like, not to use the word in any kind of exaggerated sense, it is absolutely merciless, like Dylan was saying.
And we were begging for one of those after the movies we had watched before, because most of them were tongue in cheek and funny, and this one was a 4 a.m. just scary movie, and it was a great one to end on. I don't know if it was a great one or an awful one, because that's the last thing, like the last note of the night is on this movie, The fucking Canal.
Right when you're ready to go to bed. This movie makes sure you're not doing it. Yeah.
So let's delve into it a little bit more.
The crux of this movie is not like outward scares. There's not really a whole lot of them. There's not a whole lot of scenes that are just like boo or gotcha or anything.
Yeah, right.
They're not.
It's all slow.
It's a slow burn, but it's only
Not
90
slow.
minutes.
Yeah, it's not a a long movie.
And we kind of hit on this with The Shining last podcast. It's a slow burn, but it's not a bad pace.
No. There's no part of it that's out of place. It all should be there.
It's ungodly unsettling. The sound design does a lot with that.
God.
Horrific
A lot
sound
of
design.
kind of empty sewer noises
Yeah.
and stuff where there shouldn't be any.
Right.
It's strange.
And just the music and the tone, and stylistically, it's almost like a Silent Hill game in a way, the way it's shot sometimes. So it's definitely, it has notes of supernatural outside things. It's not your typical like Spanish thriller where it ends up being just like, oh, this is a murderer and we caught him or whatever. This definitely has supernatural elements to it.
Well,
in a way,
it tricks you throughout a lot of the movie. You're like, I have no idea. Is this or isn't this? Is this just guy going crazy, or is there a ghost or something like that? And it does that. I mean, a lot of movies try and flirt with that, like can you trust the narrator? Is he going crazy, sort of thing. But this one just had me utterly hooked. I had no idea, none whatsoever, what the case would be. And when it does eventually turn it around, and makes it certain one way or the other, my God, this has one of the best endings of any horror movie.
Best, terrifying, coolest, and not just the very ending, but like the last 15 minutes or so.
Yeah. Everything about the unraveling is just payoff after scare after terrifying moment. And like, I feel really brazen that I'm about to say this, but like what Dylan was saying, it gives you a lot of kind of leeway and a lot of personal preference to apply your own experiences to kind of determine what you think is happening.
Right.
And I might be so bold as to say that it's like a more well-executed Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah.
That's a really good connection.
The movie is very much about the mental aspect, what's going through your mind. I feel like this movie is almost like the director's like personal notebook. He's going through traumatic experiences and he's basically unraveling it in front of you, and like he gives you a lot of elements to tie to, like, how do I want to interpret this? And it was just that much more fun for it.
Yeah, we still have some time to kind of deconstruct this beast a little bit, and
sorry that we got to leave you out of this, man, but you need to watch.
You'll
this.
watch it.
This makes me want to watch it really bad.
I will gladly watch it again.
So
ready.
Right,
I want to watch it alone with headphones.
Oh,
in the dark.
It'll get you that way, yeah.
I would not do it.
I honestly cannot recommend that anybody does.
Some little bits and pieces that I want to throw in there. And one thing that I wanted to say briefly is that it's really really well acted by the main guy,
really well.
Not to mention his little kid who's tiny.
And adorable.
He's great as a child actor, and surprisingly, I mean, just 100% convincing.
And a lot of the movie like hinges on him too. It hinges on his reactions to things too. So he's necessary.
And sometimes for me, child actors can make or break an entire film. And
they can
this
be like
one's
really
good.
distracting.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing I wanted to kind of hit on was I don't want to say too much, but I would say this movie is literally so full on horror that there's parts that kind of are reminiscent of like your Japanese horrors,
Absolutely.
Stylistically, and I can't say too much.
Well,
but
this
it just goes off the rails.
This director flirts with a lot of different varieties of horror, but it is one of the best, like, most original cribbed things that I've ever seen. Like, it takes all the good parts from, the things we love, like British horror and the sense of unease and the domestic stuff. It takes it from Spain and the going kind of crazy stuff. It takes it from Japan with some of the visual aspects, but none of it feels copied. None of it feels cheap. It all feels like this director's kind of their magnum opus. This guy's only directed one other thing?
I think one other really major thing.
Ivan Kavanagh, I think is his name.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I've never heard of him before, but my God, I'm looking out for him now.
Yeah, he's a new director, and he's put out some pretty solid ones. So I've heard. I mean, the other one got great reviews too. I don't know what it's called, like the Tin Man, but this one, absolutely.
No, I agree. I think that we should probably be looking to pull out these other movies and get them into our list. But like what Dylan said, and I'm really glad you didn't mention any names of any movies that were pulled on. But I feel like he basically picks out his favorite parts from other movies, not parts, but favorite themes, favorite feelings. I don't know, but he pulls them together and ties them together and kind of just has this really seamless experience that makes you reverberate these other movies in your mind, but then you're just like, damn, those are not like this movie. This is the Canal, man.
This one has a great way of both being undeniably supernatural and also just rooting the horror, so that you identify with every bit of this and you hate yourself for identifying.
Right. It's terrifying. One last thing I kind of want to throw in there. We've talked about this imagery and just scary images. This has some of the most disturbingly scary images and imagery of any movie I've ever seen. And One thing that I think is done, it's actually done quite often, and I think it generally works. For some reason, literally having scary images in a movie, like photos or pictures, works for me. It's effective, and this is one that has that. And I'm talking like, the others, like post-mortem photos,
Well, those
which are
come with
scary as hell.
They established that this guy's job is an archivist, so he's supposed to go through these. And there's some really effective scenes where he's watching these movies
Early
that
1900s.
may or may not be real. Like,
Yeah.
it's not clear. But they established, like, he finds out pretty quickly that there was a murder previously in his house, which makes him second guess what's going on.
And there was also not just that, but like seance type things.
It's so scary.
So yeah, he has to watch these early 1900s like film reels and look at these pictures. And these pictures, I mean, I don't know how it always affects me so much, but when you show me a damn scary picture and you give me a good reaction to it from the actor, like in the music and the sound cues, it's scary. And there's some really scary kind of post-mortem type photos in this that they're just horrifying in themselves.
Don't bring the kids. This one is...
Yeah.
Oh my god! If you play this in front of a child, you are a total
You're
bastard.
scarring them. Yeah. This is a really deep...
No, it's dreadful. It's horrible.
If we're talking about imagery, this movie has it like in spades, and I don't want to give away anything because literally there's a guy in the room who hasn't seen it, but the movie starts out and it establishes that this is the kind of thing you're going to be seeing. It starts out with some almost like subliminal images that you don't even know if you saw what you saw, but it just sticks with you, and it's almost kind of unnerving when you first start, but then you realize it kind of comes back.
Well, then they just drop it for a while.
Yeah.
And that's what's really effective about
Right.
it. They start with this really just outward scary,
Yes,
pure
yes.
horror scene, and then nothing for a while.
Yes.
And it lets you drop your guard just enough and be unsettled just enough that when some of that kicks back into high gear, it is all the more effective.
Oh, we were like literally screaming for the last like 10-15 minutes. Like I was literally just like like
It actually woke me up. I woke up in the last few minutes because you guys were like literally screaming, and I was so
full disclosure,
confused.
like I had high hopes for this movie, and I was really wanting to get something really scary in this season, and this movie delivered, and I literally was tearing up during parts of the movie because I was just so filled with adrenaline and so scared out of my damn gourd, to use Dylan's word, that my eyes were watering. I don't know if it was because I was tired, freezing cold in the woods, but I was just out of my mind. I actually couldn't look at the screen the entire time.
Yeah.
And this movie was just like, buddy, you looked away. When you look back, you're gonna be twice as scared as you just were.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and get our last words on this individually. We'll have three of us. I think you guys aren't going to be surprised to hear that we're all three going to recommend it. But
I'll recommend it too. Why not?
I haven't even seen it.
Another disclaimer, I guess I should say, is that it makes me nervous when we're all overwhelmingly in favor of a movie because it sets the bar so high for you as a viewer. And like any horror movie, if it rubs you the wrong way, you might hate it. We all really loved it, and we gave you our ideas of it. But that's not to say everyone who watched this movie is going to love it, because we all really loved Your Next, and that's another one that tends...
very divisive.
Yeah, so it was actually funny when I saw this on a forum or something. The first thing that somebody said was, "Wow, this movie is absolutely amazing. It's so scary. It's great." And the next guy said, "What are you talking about? This movie fucking sucks." And I was like, well, there's just horror, like the genre in a nutshell. Like one guy, loves it, and the other guy hates it. But
if you like slow burns, if you're not afraid of just getting depressed from a horror movie, this is a good one.
yeah, so yeah, I have some beef with that guy who would say it sucks. I think that's again, we said, like when you go that far into hyperbole, somebody was clearly rubbed the wrong way with it. Like that movie doesn't suck. If anything, it might not like be your cup of tea, but it's well made, it's scary, it's good, and we all loved it. So with that said, I give it a strong recommend.
I give it 2 thumbs up, and then I'll take somebody else's third thumb and raise it. This thing I loved this movie. And it I'm not going to say it might not crack my top 5. I'd have to watch it again to find out, but it's definitely cracked my top 10 easily, just that quickly.
Yeah, kind of to the point you were just saying, that Dylan, like on initial viewing, I'm very inclined to start putting this in my upper echelon. I have a feeling that as I go to watch it, I'll know the scares, the scare factor will kind of go down, and the movie will leave a very long-lasting good feeling. But like my initial viewing,
It's never going to leave a good feeling. I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, that's a very good point. Unease, but what was I going to say? The movie is well executed. It has a great color palette. They use a lot of really interesting color play, which apparently I'm the only person that noticed. but I don't know, maybe I should go watch it again. But they use a color to kind of emphasize certain elements and scenes that maybe are not being told to you directly. And I think that even if the movie isn't pushing storytelling boundaries, I just thought it was so scary, and it's literally exactly what I needed at the moment. So I have to recommend it, and don't set the bar too high for yourself. Just go in and be ready to be scared shitless.
Man, did you want to weigh in on what it was like when you were asleep through it?
I woke up a few times to people screaming really loud, and that's all I
So he
remember.
gives a strong
Yeah,
recommendation.
it's two thumbs way up, two sleepy thumbs way up.
All right. Well, if we're all finished here, I just want to, again, thank you guys for joining us. And remember to check us out on our email now. It's horriblepodcast@gmail.com. Please send us something. Show us you're out
Let us know
there.
you're listening. We want to hear you.
We're so lonely.
Right. And we have the Twitter now. It's @HorribleCast. Again, that's HORRORBLE. And then podcast or cast. Once again, thank you guys. I hope we can get you guys back in the future. And stay spooky.
We love you.